My name is Isla, and I'm 29 years old. I live in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Portland, Oregon. The kind of place where the walls are so thin that I can hear my neighbor's dog snore through the night. Most people would call it small. But to me, it's a sanctuary, a space where I can breathe, imagine, and create. When the world outside feels cold and judgmental, my brushes and paints become my only friends. They listen, they never mock. They never tell me to get a real job. Art has been my safe haven since childhood. While other kids were outside playing tag or scrolling through their phones, I would sit by my bedroom window sketching faces I'd never seen before, people I imagined existed somewhere, living lives filled with meaning. My parents were practical people, both accountants who believed life was about stability, not dreams. When I told them I wanted to go to art school, my mother sighed and said, "Sweetheart, that's not a career. That's a hobby." My father nodded silently, his disappointment louder than any words could be. So I did what they wanted. I got a real job. I worked as an administrative assistant at a marketing firm downtown. I smiled during meetings, answered emails, fetched coffee, and filed reports. But every evening, as soon as I walked into my apartment, I'd peel off the day's mask and pull out my brushes. The smell of acrylics, the soft scrape of bristles against canvas, it was my therapy, my rebellion, and my truth. Over the years, painting became more than a pastime. It was the only place where I didn't feel invisible. At work, I was the quiet girl in the corner, the one who stayed late and never complained. No one asked about my weekends, my dreams, or my life. But on canvas, I could scream silently. I painted loneliness, grief, and the small flickers of hope that kept me alive. Every color, every stroke, was a confession I couldn't speak aloud. Still, I longed for someone to be a few, see my work not for validation, but to understand me. My best friend, Tessa, was the first person I ever showed my art to. She had fiery red hair, an even fierier spirit, and the kind of confidence I wished I had. When I invited her over one evening and nervously revealed my canvases, she gasped. "Isla," she whispered, "these are incredible. Why are you hiding this from the world?" I shrugged, unsure how to explain the fear that gripped me every time I thought about sharing. "Because people like me don't make it in art," I said. "We get laughed at." But Tessa didn't accept that. "Then let them laugh," she replied, crossing her arms. "At least you'll be doing what you love." She helped me create an anonymous art account on social media. We called it Soul's Palette. I posted one painting every week, always late at night. I never used my face or my name, just the artwork and a short caption describing the emotion behind it. To my surprise, a few strangers began following, then a few more. They commented things like, "This made me cry," and "I feel seen." For the first time, I felt a small spark of belonging. But that spark didn't last long. My coworkers found the account. It started innocently. One of them, Paige, I think, mentioned that she'd stumbled upon an art page that weirdly looked like Isla's gloomy style. I laughed it off, but my stomach tightened. By the next week, everyone in the office knew. They scrolled through my posts during lunch breaks, laughing and whispering. One morning, as I filled my coffee mug, I overheard two of them talking near the break room door. "Did you see her latest one?" one of them said. "She called it Empty Morning. It's literally a sad cup of coffee. How depressing can you get?" "Right?" the other replied. "Maybe she's painting her own life. Honestly, she should stop embarrassing herself." Their laughter echoed in my ears long after they'd walked away. That day, I decided to keep my head down. I worked quietly, avoided eye contact, and pretended I didn't hear the jokes. But the comments grew meaner. My boss, Megan, a woman with an icy voice and a perpetual frown, caught wind of it. "Isla," she said one afternoon, "I admire your creativity, but maybe you should focus more on your real job. Art doesn't pay the bills, you know." She smiled like she was offering advice, but the condescension stung like a slap. That night, I came home and sat in front of a blank canvas. I didn't even pick up a brush. For hours, I just stared. The weight of humiliation pressed down on my chest. Was I really that foolish? Maybe they were right. Maybe I was wasting my time on something meaningless. But then, I thought of Tessa, of her belief in me, of the strangers who said my art touched their hearts. I couldn't quit now. I picked up my brush and began to paint something raw, a storm of grays, blacks, and streaks of red bleeding across the canvas. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. I titled it, Drowning Silence. That night, I uploaded it to Soul's Palette without thinking twice. The next morning at work, everyone was whispering again. I tried to ignore them until I stepped into the main office and froze. There, hanging on the wall near the reception desk, were printed copies of my paintings. Each one had a white piece of paper taped beneath it with handwritten captions: The Struggle of a Boring Life, When Sadness Meets Unemployment, Modern Art or a Cry for Help? The laughter that followed cut through me like glass. I stood there, numb, unable to move, my pulse roaring in my ears. Megan walked past, glanced at the display, and said with a smirk, "Looks like your work's finally getting some attention." One day, they crossed a line I couldn't ignore. They printed my paintings and used them as office decorations to mock me. Walking into the office that morning felt like stepping into a nightmare. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had walked into the wrong building. My paintings, my deeply personal, soul-bearing pieces, were plastered all over the walls of the office like some kind of cruel art exhibit. There was drowning silence, right by the coffee machine. Across the hallway, unspoken grief was pinned near the printer. Every one of them had a bright white label underneath, scrawled in black marker with mocking captions. Under drowning silence, someone had written, "When sadness meets unemployment." Another said, "Abstract or accident? You decide." There was even one that read, "Cry more, paint better." The laughter around me was deafening. My coworkers were gathered in little groups, pointing and giggling as if this were the funniest prank they'd ever seen. A few even took photos, pretending to critique the pieces like art critics. "Tragic brushstrokes," one of the designers joked. "Oh, it's so emotionally unstable," another chimed in. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. My heart pounded so hard that it drowned out the noise. I felt stripped, naked, violated. Those paintings weren't just pictures. They were pieces of my pain, of nights I'd cried alone, of every insecurity I had turned into color, and now they were being passed around like office memes. I finally found my voice and asked, trembling, "Who did this?" Everyone turned to look at me, pretending to be surprised that I was upset. Paige shrugged. "Relax, Isla. It's just a joke. You should be flattered we're celebrating your artistic side." Before I could reply, Megan's voice cut through the air. "Isla, come to my office." I followed her, my hands shaking, vision blurring. Inside, she gestured for me to sit, her tone eerily calm. "I can tell you're upset," she began, crossing her legs. "But you need to understand nobody meant any harm. It's office humor. You can't take everything so seriously." I blinked at her in disbelief. "They're mocking me. They stole my work and plastered it everywhere without permission." Megan sighed. "It's just paper printouts. Not a big deal. You should really learn to laugh at yourself, Isla. That's what builds character." Something in me cracked. I felt the sting of humiliation and rage rise like fire in my chest. But I knew that if I argued, it would only make things worse. Megan was the kind of boss who fed on weakness. She'd twist any protest into evidence that you were too emotional. I stood up quietly and said, "I'm taking the rest of the day off." She raised an eyebrow but didn't stop me. I walked out of that office, keeping my head high until I reached the elevator. The moment the doors closed, I broke down. Tears poured uncontrollably. I pressed my palms to my face, wishing I could erase the morning, wishing I'd never shown anyone my art. The bus ride home felt endless. I stared out the window, numb, as the city blurred by. Every laugh I'd heard replayed in my head. Every cruel caption echoed like a whisper of mockery. When I finally reached my apartment, I didn't even turn on the lights. I walked straight into my small studio corner and sat on the floor. My canvases stared back at me, quiet, patient, like they were waiting for me to breathe again. But I couldn't. I felt hollow. A knock on the door startled me. It was Tessa. She took one look at me and didn't ask what happened. She just sat down beside me, her presence calm and grounding. After a long silence, I finally spoke. They put my paintings up in the office. To laugh at them. Her jaw tightened. They what? They printed them. Added captions. Everyone saw. Even Megan said it was just a joke. For a second, Tessa didn't speak. Then she reached over, gently taking my hand. You listen to me, she said, her voice trembling with restrained anger. You don't let them take this from you. Your art is you. You can't give them that power. I stared at her, unsure how to respond. But they've already taken it. I feel empty, Tessa. Like I don't belong anywhere. You do, she said firmly. And one day, you're going to make them eat every cruel word they've ever said. Her confidence in me felt unreal, but a small spark lit somewhere deep inside. Maybe she was right. Maybe I could turn this pain into something more. That night, after she left, I sat in front of my easel again. I stared at a blank canvas for a long time. My reflection in the window looked tired, broken. But there was something new in my eyes, anger mixed with resolve. I picked up my brush and began painting, not with sadness this time, but with fury. Every stroke was deliberate, heavy, burning with emotion. I didn't care if it was beautiful. I just needed to let it out. Hours passed without me realizing. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, I had created something raw and jagged, a reflection of betrayal and resilience. I titled it Mocked but Not Broken. When I stepped back to look at it, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just painting anymore. I was fighting back. The next day, I returned to work with a mask of calm. People avoided my eyes. The prints were gone, someone must have taken them down, probably under Megan's quiet orders after realizing it could cause trouble. No one apologized, not one person. They just acted like it never happened. I decided then that I would never again let that office define me. If they saw my art as a joke, fine. I would make sure one day the world would see it differently. I spent the next few nights uploading my best works online, using my real name this time. I didn't hide behind Soul's palette anymore. I wanted to own my truth, even if it scared me. And then, just as I was about to close my laptop that night, I saw a new message in my inbox. It was from someone named Lucas Reinhardt. The subject line read, "Invitation to exhibit at Harlow Gallery." That night, a stranger messaged me, someone claiming to be from a well-known art gallery. The message seemed too good to be true. It was late, the kind of hour when exhaustion and hope blur together. My laptop screen glowed in the dim light of my apartment, illuminating the email that made my heart race. The sender's name was Lucas Reinhardt, and his signature read, "Assistant Curator, Harlow Gallery." At first, I thought it was a prank. My coworkers had already humiliated me once. Maybe this was another cruel trick. But as I reread the message, my skepticism began to crumble. It was too detailed, too professional. Dear Miss Hart, I recently came across your artwork online and was deeply moved by your emotional realism and technique. The Harlow Gallery is curating a new exhibition titled Raw Soul, The Emotion of Modern Expression, and your work would fit beautifully within our theme. If you are interested, I would love to discuss featuring your paintings in our upcoming showcase. I stared at the words for a long time, my pulse thudding in my ears. The Harlow Gallery wasn't just any art space, it was the gallery. A place where serious artists debuted, where critics and collectors gathered, where reputations were made. I'd walked past it dozens of times, pressing my face against the glass just to look at the paintings inside, wondering what it would feel like to belong there. I read the message again, then again. Could this really be happening? Still, doubt clawed at me. Maybe it was a scam. Maybe someone had copied the gallery's logo and name to get a rise out of me. After everything that had happened at work, trusting anything felt dangerous. I opened a new tab and began researching. My fingers trembled as I typed, Lucas Reinhardt Harlow Gallery, His name appeared instantly: photos, articles, interviews. He was real. A respected curator known for discovering emerging artists. I let out a shaky breath. It wasn't a prank. It was real. I grabbed my phone and called Tessa. It rang twice before she answered, her voice groggy. Isla? It's 2 in the morning. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I said breathlessly. I got an email. From the Harlow Gallery. They want to feature my art. There was a pause, then a loud rustling sound as she sat up. Wait, the Harlow Gallery? The one downtown? Yes, Lucas Reinhardt emailed me. He said he saw my work online. Oh my God, Isla, she gasped. This is it. This is your chance. Her excitement poured through the phone, filling the silence of my tiny apartment with warmth. I laughed, half in disbelief, half in joy. But beneath the excitement was a layer of fear. What if I'm not good enough? I whispered. What if they change their mind when they see me? Tessa's voice softened. You are good enough. You've always been good enough. You just needed someone to see it. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed every brushstroke I'd ever made, every cruel word from my coworkers, every moment I doubted myself. For the first time in years, I felt something different: validation. Not from people who mocked me, but from someone who understood art. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my window, and for once, I welcomed the day. I made coffee, sat at my desk, and typed a careful reply. Dear Mr. Reinhardt, thank you for reaching out. I am honored by your message and would love to discuss the exhibition further. Please let me know when we can arrange a meeting. Sincerely, Isla Hart. After hitting send, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. This could be the beginning of something or nothing. 2 days passed. I checked my inbox every hour, my stomach knotting with anticipation. Then, finally, his name appeared again. Isla, thank you for your response. I'd love to meet in person to discuss your inclusion in the show. Are you available to visit the Harlow Gallery this Friday at 3 p.m.? I must have read it 5 times before replying yes. When Friday arrived, I stood in front of my closet, completely panicked about what to wear. I didn't own artist chic. My wardrobe was office blouses and jeans splattered with dried paint. I finally settled on a simple black dress and tied my hair into a low bun, praying I looked somewhat professional. The city buzzed with life as I made my way downtown. The closer I got, the more my nerves grew. My reflection in the glass doors of the Harlow Gallery looked like someone pretending to belong. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped inside. The space was beautiful: high ceilings, white walls, and soft lighting that made every color sing. A few artists were setting up displays, their canvases glowing under spotlights. I couldn't believe I was actually standing there. A man with light brown hair and kind eyes approached me, holding a clipboard. Isla Hart? Yes, I said, trying not to sound breathless. He smiled warmly. Lucas Reinhardt, it's a pleasure to meet you. We shook hands, and for a moment, I felt grounded again. He led me through the gallery, asking about my creative process, my inspiration, and the emotions behind my work. I told him about painting late at night, about using art to turn pain into color. He listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. You have a gift, he said finally. You don't paint what people see, you paint what they feel. That's rare. I felt tears sting my eyes. No one had ever said that to me before. Lucas explained that the gallery was featuring 6 emerging artists, each representing a different emotional theme. He wanted me to submit 3 pieces for consideration. We'll handle the framing and installation, he added. Just bring your art, the rest is on us. I nodded, overwhelmed with gratitude. As we finished our meeting, Lucas said, I'm genuinely looking forward to working with you, Isla. This exhibition will be something special. I left the gallery floating. The cold wind outside couldn't touch me. For the first time, I believed in my future. But as I walked past the cafe next door, someone called my name. I turned and froze. It was Megan, my boss. She was sitting by the window, her expression unreadable as she sipped her coffee. Our eyes met for a long, tense moment. Then, slowly, she smirked. When I arrived at the gallery for our meeting, I saw someone there who made my blood run cold, Megan. Of all people, I never expected to see my boss at the gallery. There she was, Megan, the woman who'd spent months belittling me, standing confidently in a place she didn't belong. Her usual gray office blazer was replaced by a sleek cream pantsuit, and she wore the smug kind of smile that screamed entitlement. My pulse quickened. For a moment, I thought maybe I was imagining her, that stress and adrenaline had conjured a hallucination. But when she turned her head, our eyes locked, and the smirk that curved her lips told me everything I needed to know. "Well, if it isn't Isla," she said, her tone dripping with faux surprise. "What brings you here? Looking for inspiration?" I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep my voice calm. "Actually, I have a meeting with the curator." Her eyebrows lifted, the corners of her mouth twitching as though she was holding back laughter. "You? With the curator?" She let out a small chuckle. "That's adorable." The words hit like sharp needles. The old Isla, the one who'd hide behind politeness and insecurity, wanted to shrink away, to disappear into the crowd. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Not after everything she and my coworkers had done to me. "Yes," I said evenly. "Lucas Reinhardt invited me personally." The laughter on her lips froze for half a second before she regained her composure. "Of course he did," she said with a tight smile. "Well, best of luck with that." I turned and walked toward the gallery entrance, every step measured, deliberate. My hands trembled slightly, but I refused to let her see that. Inside, the air was cool and still, the faint scent of varnish and fresh paint lingering in the space. The moment I stepped past the threshold, the noise of the city faded away, replaced by the soft hum of conversation and the distant sound of jazz. Lucas met me at the entrance, greeting me with the same warm smile from before. "Isla, I'm so glad you made it." "Thank you for inviting me," I managed to say, though my voice still carried the faint tremor of nerves. He gestured toward the gallery floor, where walls gleamed with art lit by perfect white light. "Let me show you where your work will hang once it's ready." As he led me deeper into the space, Megan's laughter echoed faintly behind me, mingling with the chatter of guests. She was talking animatedly to a group of patrons, clearly enjoying the attention. I couldn't help but wonder what she was doing there. She wasn't an artist, and she'd never once expressed interest in art beyond mocking mine. Lucas stopped in front of a pristine white wall with soft light cascading down it. "This," he said, "is where I'd like your pieces to go. The emotion in your work, your vulnerability fits the theme perfectly." I stared at the blank space, imagining my paintings hanging there for people to see. The thought was surreal. For years, my art had existed only within the confines of my small apartment, hidden away from judgment. Now, it was going to live in a place where strangers could connect with it, where I could finally be seen. "That's incredible," I whispered. Lucas smiled. "I meant what I said, Isla. Your work has a voice. You'll be one of 6 artists featured in the Raw Soul exhibition next month. It's about the beauty of emotion, the courage it takes to create from pain." The words sank deep into me. For the first time in a long while, someone didn't just see me as the quiet girl from accounting. He saw me as an artist. When the meeting ended, Lucas handed me an official invitation letter. "Submit 3 original works," he said. "They should tell a story. Your story. We'll handle the framing, logistics, everything. I can't wait to see what you bring." "Thank you," I said softly. "I won't let you down." As I stepped out of the gallery, the late afternoon sun hit my face, warm and golden. My heart felt light. I wanted to savor that feeling, to believe, just for a second, that nothing could ruin this moment. But then I saw Megan again. She was leaning against the railing outside the building, scrolling through her phone. When she noticed me, she slipped it into her purse and walked straight toward me. "So," she said casually, "you're really doing this art thing?" "Yes." I kept my tone firm. "And it's going well, actually." She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "You know, I've been consulting part-time for event planning lately. I know a few people in the art scene. Maybe I could..." Offer some advice? I blinked, stunned by her sudden change in demeanor. Advice? Megan smiled, her eyes glinting. Networking, Isla. It's not just about talent, it's about who you know. You don't want to make rookie mistakes that could embarrass you, right? It took everything in me not to laugh. The woman who had ridiculed me for years was now pretending to be some kind of mentor. I think I'll be fine, I said, brushing past her. Her smile faltered, and for a fleeting second, I saw the real emotion behind her eyes, disbelief mixed with something else, envy. As I walked away, her voice followed me. Just remember, Isla, not everyone who praises you means it. I didn't look back. That evening, I couldn't focus on anything else. I kept replaying the day in my mind, the meeting, the wall where my art would hang, Megan's face when she realized I belonged there. It was all too surreal. Later that night, I called Tessa again. You won't believe who I saw at the gallery. Megan? She guessed instantly. Yeah, apparently she's involved somehow. I don't know what she's doing there, but she looked furious when she realized I wasn't lying about my meeting. Tessa laughed. Of course she did. You're proving her wrong, Isla. People like her can't stand when the person they underestimate starts winning. Her words made me smile. It felt good, I admitted. For once, she couldn't belittle me. She saw me being taken seriously by someone she'd probably love to impress. Keep your focus, Tessa warned gently. She's not done with you, I can feel it. I knew she was right. Megan had never been the kind of person to accept losing control. If she was involved with the gallery in any way, she wouldn't sit quietly while I succeeded, but I pushed the thought aside. I wanted to enjoy this just for tonight. Before bed, I stood in front of my easel, looking at my unfinished canvases. I could almost hear the faint echo of laughter from my office, the same laughter that had once made me doubt everything. But now, it fueled me. I dipped my brush into deep crimson paint and whispered to myself. You'll see my name on a wall soon and you'll choke on your laughter. But I had no idea Megan would try to destroy my chance before it even began. A week before the exhibition, disaster struck. Everything had been going so perfectly that I almost started to believe life was finally giving me a break. I had completed 2 of my 3 paintings for the Harlow Gallery showcase and was working late into the night on the final one, a massive piece called Fractured Light. It was the most ambitious work I had ever done, a visual story about reclaiming brokenness. My small apartment smelled like paint thinner and coffee. Brushes and half-empty tubes of color covered every surface. Tessa came over almost every evening, bringing takeout and encouragement. You know, she said one night, sipping her soda as I blended shades of deep blue into gold. You're not just painting anymore, Isla. You're rewriting everything they said about you. Her words filled me with quiet pride. For once, I felt like the world might finally see me not as the quiet office girl with messy hair and unpolished shoes, but as an artist with a voice that mattered. By the end of the week, all 3 paintings were complete. I stood back, my chest tight with emotion. Each canvas carried a piece of me: pain, rage, healing, hope. I carefully wrapped them in protective covers and leaned them against the corner of my office workspace at home, waiting for the scheduled pickup day. That Monday, I decided to take them to work with me so I could hand them off directly to the courier. It wasn't ideal, but the pickup address was listed under my work office, the one still tied to my billing information. I figured it would be fine for just a few hours. The morning went as usual. The fluorescent lights hummed, keyboards clicked, and no one looked up when I walked in. Most of them had gone quiet around me lately ever since the gallery invitation had started circulating on social media. I suspected Megan had mentioned it to others, though she hadn't spoken a word to me since the day we saw each other downtown. By lunchtime, I stepped out for a coffee run. When I returned an hour later, my heart dropped. The paintings were gone. At first, I thought maybe the courier had arrived early. I rushed to the front desk, but the receptionist shook her head. No one came by for you, Isla. I ran back to my desk, panic rising in my throat. My corner looked wrong. The protective covers I had left were shredded and smeared with paint. One canvas lay half-torn under the desk, streaked with water and something sticky coffee, maybe. Another had a large footprint pressed into the center, cracking the dried paint. My knees went weak. It wasn't an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. And when I lifted my gaze, I saw Megan standing a few feet away, watching me from her office doorway. She didn't say a word, just tilted her head and smiled. A small, knowing smile that chilled me to my core. I wanted to scream, to accuse her outright, but what proof did I have? None. She would deny everything, twist it around, make me look paranoid or unstable. That was her specialty. Instead, I gathered the ruined canvases with trembling hands and carried them out of the building. My coworkers watched but said nothing. The silence was worse than laughter, it was complicity. I walked home that afternoon through light drizzle, trying not to cry. But when I reached my apartment, I collapsed to the floor and finally let the tears come. All those nights, all that work, it was gone. I called Tessa, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. When she arrived 20 minutes later, she knelt beside me, examining the damage. "Who would do this?" she whispered. "Megan," I said flatly. "I know it was her." Tessa's eyes darkened. "Then you have to report her." "I can't prove it. And even if I did, it wouldn't fix my paintings. The exhibition's next week." She was silent for a moment before standing. "Then we repaint." I looked up, startled. "Repaint? Tessa, I can't, there's no time." "There's always time," she said firmly. "You're not giving her what she wants. She wants you to break. Don't give her that satisfaction." Her conviction was like a spark to my despair. She stayed with me all night, mixing paints, prepping canvases, helping however she could while I poured every ounce of fury, humiliation, and defiance into new creations. I worked non-stop for 4 days. No sleep, barely any food, just brush after brush, color after color. My hands cramped, my eyes burned, but I didn't stop. What came out of those sleepless nights was rawer, fiercer than anything I'd ever painted before. When the final layer dried, I stared at my work and felt something strange peace. These weren't just replacements. They were rebirths, proof that no matter how many times someone tried to silence me, I'd still find a way to speak. I titled the new series Resilience in Color. Tessa helped me deliver them to the Harlow Gallery 2 days before the show. Lucas greeted us at the entrance, visibly impressed. "These are extraordinary," he said, his eyes scanning the canvases. "They have such intensity, like they've lived through fire." I smiled faintly. "Maybe they have." He laughed, not realizing how literal that was. "You've exceeded my expectations, Isla." Truly. Hearing those words almost made me forget the pain of what had happened. For the first time in weeks, I felt proud again. But deep down, a small part of me still burned. I wanted Megan to know she hadn't won, that her cruelty had only pushed me further. As Tessa and I walked home, I whispered, "I won't expose her." "Not yet." Tessa glanced at me. "What do you mean?" "I want her to see me succeed first. Then she'll realize her power over me is gone." She nodded slowly, a proud smile tugging at her lips. "Now that's the Isla I know." We laughed softly, exhaustion and triumph blending in the same breath. That night, as I drifted off to sleep, I dreamed of bright lights, applause, and my paintings hanging on pristine white walls. I didn't know if it was wishful thinking or a vision of what was coming. But either way, I was ready. The night of the exhibition, I spotted Megan again, but this time, she wasn't just a guest. The gallery lights shimmered like a dream I'd painted myself into. The night of the exhibition arrived faster than I expected, and yet every hour leading up to it had felt like an eternity. My heart was a drumbeat of anxiety and anticipation as I stood in front of the Harlow Gallery, staring up at the elegant black and gold banner stretched across the entrance. Raw Soul, an exhibition of modern emotion. My name, printed in delicate serif letters among the list of featured artists, made my breath catch. Isla Hart. Seeing it displayed like that, out in the open for everyone to read, was almost unreal. I stepped inside. The gallery was alive with soft music and the murmur of conversation. People drifted from piece to piece, glasses of champagne in hand, their expressions thoughtful and intrigued. The air smelled faintly of lilies and varnish. Every light was perfectly placed, casting a warm glow over the art that lined the walls. I spotted my section near the back, a white space accented by gold trim and subtle spotlights that bathed my paintings in gentle luminance. And there they were. My 3 reborn works: resilience in color, fractured light, and drowning silence. Seeing them together like that made something deep inside me tremble. They no longer felt like pieces of pain, they felt like proof of survival. Lucas appeared beside me, smiling warmly. "They look incredible," he said. "You've transformed the room." "Thank you," I whispered, still in awe. "I can't believe I'm actually here." "You belong here," he replied. "You're not just part of the exhibition, Isla, you're its heart." I looked around, watching as guests stopped to study my work. Some tilted their heads thoughtfully, others whispered softly to each other. Every reaction, even the quiet ones, made my pulse race. For years, I'd painted alone in silence. Now, strangers were feeling something because of me. It was overwhelming in the best way possible. Tessa arrived soon after, her energy filling the space like sunlight. She wore a dark green dress and carried her usual unapologetic confidence. "You," she said, pointing at me, "are absolutely glowing." I laughed nervously. "I think I'm sweating more than glowing." "Doesn't matter," she said, looping her arm through mine. "You're the star tonight. Own it." For a while, I managed to forget all the fear and humiliation that had led me here. I laughed with a few of the other artists, exchanged pleasantries with gallery guests, and even gave a brief interview to a local blogger who wanted to feature my story. The night felt perfect until I saw her. Megan. She stood near the far end of the room, wearing a sleek black dress and a confident, polished smile. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her makeup flawless. She looked every bit the professional socialite, as though she'd been born to mingle in galleries. But seeing her there made my stomach twist. At first, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Maybe she was a guest of another artist. But then I noticed the lanyard around her neck, the one that said event consultant. Of course. She hadn't just come to watch, she had inserted herself into the event. Tessa noticed my expression and followed my gaze. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered. "What is she doing here?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But she's part of the staff, look." Tessa frowned. "Then she's not here to appreciate art, that's for sure." I tried to shake it off, focusing instead on the people gathering near my section. Lucas was introducing me to a small group of collectors, and I forced my attention back to the conversation. "This is Isla Hart," he said proudly. "One of our most powerful emotional artists. Her work captures the human condition in a way that's both vulnerable and defiant." The group murmured in approval. One woman in a navy blazer leaned closer to fractured light and said softly, "It feels like she painted healing itself." Hearing that made every sleepless night, every cruel word, worth it. I smiled, thanked her, and explained my inspiration without revealing too much of my personal story. I wanted the art to speak for itself. Then, something unexpected happened. A man approached Lucas, gesturing toward my paintings. "Are these pieces for sale?" he asked. Lucas turned to me with a grin. "Looks like we've got a buyer." My mouth fell open. "Already?" He nodded. "Would you be open to selling?" I could barely speak. "Of course." As Lucas and the man discussed pricing, I glanced over my shoulder and caught Megan watching us. Her expression wasn't neutral this time. It was tight, cold, unreadable. When she realized I'd noticed her, she quickly looked away, pretending to busy herself arranging brochures. Tessa leaned in and whispered, "She's fuming." Good. I smiled faintly, but my nerves buzzed. Megan was unpredictable, and the fact that she had any involvement in this event felt like a storm cloud hovering over my moment of peace. Still, I tried to ignore her and focus on what mattered. The buyer eventually left his contact info with Lucas, promising to finalize the purchase later in the evening. My first real sale. The thought made me dizzy with joy. As the night continued, more guests arrived, and the gallery buzzed with excitement. Cameras flashed, laughter mingled with the soft music, and I found myself floating through it all in a daze. My art, the same work people had mocked in the office, was now drawing admiration from strangers who saw value in it. I walked past drowning silence and paused for a moment. I remembered how that painting had once symbolized everything I'd lost: hope, confidence, voice. Now, hanging on that pristine white wall, it stood for everything I'd reclaimed. Then, just as I allowed myself to exhale, I heard her voice. "Well, would you look at that?" Megan said, stepping up beside me. "You actually managed to make something of yourself." Her tone was syrupy, sweet, but her eyes gleamed with malice. "I'm surprised to see you here," I said evenly. She smiled. "Oh, I've been consulting with Harlow Gallery lately. Event management, PR, that sort of thing. I had no idea you were part of this. What a small world." I forced a polite smile. "Yes, small indeed." Her gaze flicked to my paintings. "I have to admit," she said, voice lowering slightly. "They look emotional. Almost like you're still processing something." I turned to her, my voice steady. "Art is about processing. Something you'd know if you cared about it." Her smile faltered just slightly. "Well, don't get too comfortable. The art world can be cruel, you know." Before I could respond, Lucas called my name from across the room. A group of journalists wanted a quote from me. I left her standing there, her words lingering like poison in the air. As I began the short interview, I could feel her eyes on me from across the gallery, simmering with quiet hostility. And then, right as I was starting to believe nothing could ruin this night, I heard Megan's voice again, louder this time, cutting through the hum of conversation. Megan stepped forward and said something that could ruin everything. Megan's voice sliced through the crowd like a blade. At first, I didn't realize she was talking about me. I was standing near Lucas and a small circle of guests, answering a few soft questions from a journalist about my creative process. My hands were still shaking from excitement. The moment felt surreal until I heard Megan's unmistakable voice cut through the hum of polite chatter. "Oh, come on," she said loudly. "You all know she's not some tortured genius. She's just an office assistant who had a breakdown and decided to call it art." The entire gallery seemed to still at once. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the music, it all stopped, replaced by the ringing silence of shock. My stomach dropped so hard I almost felt dizzy. I turned toward her. Megan stood in the center of the crowd, one manicured hand on her hip, her lips curved in that same cruel smirk I'd seen so many times before. "Megan," Lucas said sharply, his expression darkening. "That's completely out of line." "Oh, I'm just telling the truth," she replied sweetly. "Everyone here deserves to know who they're celebrating. This woman isn't some mysterious artist discovered online. She's a data clerk from our office who used to doodle on her lunch breaks." A nervous ripple spread through the crowd. Cameras were still rolling. Someone whispered my name. My throat tightened, my palms clammy. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes pressing against my skin. I wanted to disappear. Megan wasn't done. She took out her phone, scrolling before flashing the screen toward the group. "See this? These are screenshots from our office chat. We used to joke about her little paintings all the time. Look, here's one where she posted that depressing coffee cup painting. And here's the one we all laughed at for being, what was it? Oh, right, a cry for help." A few gasps came from the guests. I caught sight of Tessa pushing through the crowd toward me, her face furious. "That's enough," she snapped. "Put your phone away." Megan turned her attention to Tessa, sneering. "You must be her little cheerleader. You've always been good at enabling delusions, haven't you?" Lucas stepped forward, his voice steady but cold. "Miss Cooper, I'm asking you to leave." "Oh, don't be ridiculous," Megan said, her tone sharp now. "You people are being duped." This is what happens when mediocrity gets mistaken for authenticity. You're glorifying an amateur who doesn't even understand the basics of composition. You think her sob stories make her art valuable? She's a fraud, and I'm not going to let this entire gallery embarrass itself because of her pity parade. My vision blurred with tears. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I could hear whispers, some sympathetic, some curious. A few people looked away, uncomfortable. Others watched like it was entertainment. For a moment, I thought I might faint. The humiliation was suffocating. Every nightmare, every insecurity, every voice that had told me I'd never make it, it was all unfolding right there, in front of everyone. Then, beneath all that noise, something inside me snapped. No, I thought. Not again. I'd spent too long letting people like Megan control the narrative of my life. Every insult, every laugh, every dismissal had painted invisible bruises on my soul. But I wasn't that quiet girl anymore. Not tonight. I took a slow breath and stepped forward. My voice trembling but clear. "You're right about one thing," I said, looking directly at her. "I was an office assistant. I worked a job I hated so I could afford paint. I spent nights crying over canvases while people like you laughed, but that doesn't make my art meaningless. It makes it mine." The room went completely still. Megan blinked, caught off guard by my tone. "I didn't paint for recognition," I continued. "I painted because it was the only way I could survive. Every stroke you mocked, every color you called a joke, it was me trying to breathe through the pain that people like you caused. And you know what? You can't take that away anymore." Someone near the back began to clap. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the sound grew louder, filling the room. The applause wasn't wild or chaotic, it was steady, deliberate, and powerful. Megan's expression twisted from smug to stunned. She lowered her phone, her confidence faltering. Lucas stepped beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "That," he said firmly, addressing the crowd, "is what true art sounds like." Tessa grinned through her tears, clapping the loudest of them all. Megan tried to speak again, but the energy of the room had shifted. The patrons weren't interested in her venom anymore. They turned away, back toward the paintings, back toward the art that had brought them there in the first place. She stood alone, her power evaporating in the glow of my redemption. I turned my back on her and faced my paintings, my chest still heaving. For the first time, I saw them differently. Drowning silence didn't feel like a wound anymore, it felt like victory. Fractured light no longer spoke of loss but of strength. Lucas guided me aside as a few journalists approached. "Don't let her rattle you," he murmured. "The world just saw exactly who you are." "I wasn't planning to say anything," I admitted, still trembling. "It just came out." He smiled softly. "Sometimes the truth needs to." Across the room, I caught sight of Megan storming out, her heels clicking furiously against the polished floor. I didn't feel anger anymore, only a strange, calm sadness. Her cruelty had given me something she'd never understand: fire. The rest of the night blurred into flashes of light and faces. Reporters asked for statements. Guests congratulated me. Someone even mentioned how powerful it was to witness an artist defend her truth in real time. By the time the gallery began to empty, I was exhausted but alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. Tessa squeezed my hand. "You handled that like a queen," she whispered. "She thought she was exposing you, but she only exposed herself." I smiled faintly. I think that's the first time I've ever felt free. As we stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights shimmered around us. The humiliation I'd felt just hours earlier had transformed into something unexpected momentum. Because in that single moment of courage, the world had finally seen me for who I was. That single moment of courage changed everything, including my future. By morning, my story was everywhere. When I opened my eyes, I didn't even remember falling asleep. My phone was vibrating nonstop on the nightstand, lighting up every few seconds with notifications. At first, I thought it was just Tessa checking in or maybe Lucas sending a follow-up about the exhibition. But when I unlocked the screen, my breath caught. Hundreds of messages, mentions, tags, DM requests. My social media feed had exploded overnight. At the top of my notifications was a video posted by someone I didn't even know. The caption read, "Office worker turned artist stands up to her bully at gallery opening, this is powerful." The video had already hit over 2 million views in less than 12 hours. My hands shook as I tapped play. There I was, standing in the middle of the gallery, facing Megan, my voice trembling but steady as I told her I painted because it helped me survive. The camera caught the applause, the shift in the room, the exact moment her smug expression faltered. Watching it felt surreal, like I was seeing someone else live my life. The comments were endless. This woman just turned humiliation into art. Go, Isla. You spoke for every creative who's been mocked. Her courage gave me chills. There were even memes and quotes using my words from the confrontation. I didn't paint for recognition, I painted to survive. It had already been turned into digital posters and shared by major art pages. I sat frozen on my bed, my coffee growing cold in my hands. I had spent years hiding behind my art. Afraid to show my face. Afraid to be seen. Now, the entire internet was seeing me all at once. Within an hour, my inbox flooded with interview requests, bloggers, online magazines, even a local TV station. My art account, Soul's Palette, which had once struggled to break a few hundred followers, was now climbing by the thousands every minute. When Tessa called, she didn't even bother saying hello. "You're viral!" she shouted through the speaker. "You're literally everywhere. People are calling you the voice of raw emotion." I laughed nervously. "This can't be real." "Oh, it's real," she said. "You're trending on art forums and Twitter. Everyone's talking about how authentic your work is. It's not just your paintings, it's your story, Isla. People see themselves in it." I leaned back, overwhelmed. I didn't want fame. I just wanted to paint. "And that's exactly why it happened," she said. "You didn't chase attention, you earned it." The day passed in a blur of interviews and messages. A writer from Art in Motion magazine emailed saying they wanted to feature me in their New Voices issue. Lucas called around noon, his tone bubbling with excitement. "Isla, do you realize what's happening?" he said. "Your story's gone global. The gallery's phone hasn't stopped ringing. People want to buy your paintings. All 3 of them." "All 3? I repeated, stunned. "Yes. One buyer even asked about commissioning a 4th piece, something to represent your triumph. You're officially in demand." I laughed, half disbelieving, half terrified. "Lucas, I don't even know how to process this." "Don't think too hard about it," he said kindly. "Just keep being yourself. You're the real deal. Isla and the world can feel that." When I hung up, I stared around my tiny apartment. The same cracked windows, the same creaky floor, the same paint-stained brushes lying in jars on my table. Everything looked exactly as it had before, but nothing felt the same. I wasn't invisible anymore. That evening, I walked to the corner cafe for air. The barista, who usually barely looked at me, did a double-take when I approached the counter. "Wait, are you that artist, the one from the viral video?" I froze, my cheeks warming. Yeah, that's me," he grinned, handing me my drink on the house. "That was amazing! You really told her off?" My girlfriend cried watching it. I smiled awkwardly, murmuring a thank you. But inside, something new stirred recognition mixed with fear. Fame, even the accidental kind, came with exposure. My anonymity was gone. By the time I returned home, my follower count had tripled again. Reporters were messaging me for quotes. Art influencers were tagging me in empowerment posts. I couldn't scroll without seeing my name somewhere, and not all of it was kind. Amid the sea of praise, a few cruel comments appeared too, people claiming I'd staged the drama for attention or that victim art sells better. For a moment, doubt crept back in. The internet loved to build people up just to tear them down. I shut my phone off, took a deep breath, and went to my easel. The only thing that had ever grounded me was painting. I dipped my brush into a swirl of gold and gray, letting the colors bleed into each other. I painted myself standing before a wall of faceless figures, some laughing, some applauding, all watching. I titled it Scene at Last. When I finished, I felt lighter. Later that night, Tessa came over with takeout and a bottle of cheap champagne. "To your viral fame," she said, clinking glasses with me. "And to the end of every person who ever doubted you." I laughed, sipping the bubbly liquid. "I don't even know what comes next." "Whatever it is," she said with a grin, "you'll handle it. You've already won." But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of something bigger. Something unpredictable. The next morning, I got an email from the company's HR department, the same office where everyone had laughed at me, printed my art to mock me, and called me a joke. The message was short, polite, and chillingly formal. "Isla, the executive team would like to schedule a meeting with you at your earliest convenience. It's regarding recent online developments and internal concerns. Please confirm your availability." Tessa raised an eyebrow when I showed her. "That doesn't sound like congratulations." I sighed. "No. It sounds like damage control." Still, I went. I needed closure. I needed to face them one last time, not as the quiet employee they ridiculed, but as the woman they underestimated. I walked into that glass building the next day with my head high, the receptionist staring at me like I was someone entirely new. And when I stepped into the CEO's office, I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry at what he said next. What he told me the next day stunned me completely. Walking into the office that day felt like entering a battlefield I'd already won. The familiar click of my shoes against the polished tile echoed through the building's sterile halls, but this time it sounded different, louder, more deliberate. The receptionist, who once barely glanced at me, straightened up when she saw me walk in. Her awkward smile was forced, like she didn't know whether to greet me or apologize. "Good morning, Isla," she said softly. "The CEO's waiting for you?" I nodded, keeping my voice even. "Thank you." Every step toward the executive floor felt surreal. This was the same office that had treated me like background noise, the same coworkers who had mocked me for chasing fairy tale dreams. And now, because of a viral video, they suddenly cared about what I had to say. When I reached the CEO's door, I hesitated. The nameplate gleamed gold under the fluorescent lights. Gavin Stone, Chief Executive Officer. I took a steadying breath, straightened my jacket, and knocked. "Come in," a deep voice called. I stepped inside. Gavin was seated behind his enormous mahogany desk, hands clasped neatly in front of him. He wasn't the kind of man who liked wasting words. His eyes studied me, unreadable. As I sat down across from him, "Thank you for coming in, Isla," he began, his tone carefully measured. "I assume you've seen the situation online." "Yes," I said calmly. "I've seen it." He exhaled slowly. "Well, I wanted to speak to you personally because the video has attracted considerable attention both externally and internally." I stayed silent, waiting. He continued, "I've watched it myself. I was disturbed by what I saw, particularly by the behavior of one of our department heads." "Megan," I said quietly. He nodded. "Yes, I understand there was ongoing tension between you two." "Tension," I echoed with a small, bitter smile. "That's one word for it." Gavin leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. "I want to start by apologizing, Isla. No employee should be subjected to that kind of mockery or disrespect, whether inside or outside of work. We pride ourselves on professionalism here, and clearly, that standard wasn't met." The apology caught me off guard. I had expected deflection, maybe even veiled hostility, but not sincerity. "I appreciate that," I said. He nodded again, steepling his fingers. "Effective immediately, Megan has been suspended pending a full HR investigation. Her behavior at that event and in prior incidents that have now come to light is unacceptable." A strange silence filled the room. I stared at the polished edge of his desk, processing his words. Megan, suspended. The woman who had spent years undermining me, who'd destroyed my work and tried to humiliate me publicly, was finally facing consequences. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like balance. Thank you, I said softly. He offered a small smile. I also wanted to address your status here. You're under no obligation to continue working with us after everything that's happened. However, if you'd like time to think, we can offer you paid leave at least until the media attention dies down. I almost laughed at the irony. Paid leave, after everything. I had painted my way out of obscurity, and now the same people who once ridiculed me were offering money for my silence. No, I said, my tone gentle but firm. I appreciate the gesture, but I won't be taking any leave. I'm resigning. He blinked. Are you certain? Completely. I think it's time I stop living halfway between who I was and who I'm meant to be. For a moment, he just looked at me, then nodded. I understand. I wish you the best, Isla. You've shown tremendous resilience. When I stood to leave, he added, if you ever need a reference, you have one. You've handled yourself with grace throughout this ordeal. I smiled faintly. Thank you. That means more than you know. As I walked through the office for the last time, everything felt different. The cubicles that once boxed me in now looked smaller. People stopped typing as I passed, pretending to work while sneaking glances. Some murmured awkward hellos, others couldn't meet my eyes. Paige, the same coworker who'd once mocked my art the loudest, approached hesitantly near the exit. Isla, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how cruel we were. I studied her for a moment, seeing the guilt written all over her face. I didn't hate her, not anymore. The anger had burned out somewhere along the way, replaced by quiet understanding. I forgive you, I said. But maybe next time you see someone trying to build something, don't tear it down just because it's different. She nodded quickly, eyes wet, and stepped aside. I pushed open the glass doors and stepped outside. The crisp autumn air hit my face, fresh and clean. It felt like freedom. That evening, I met Tessa at the same cafe where we used to spend our lunch breaks. She was already seated with 2 steaming mugs of coffee waiting. So, she said, grinning, how did it go? I exhaled, almost laughing. They suspended Megan. Tessa's eyes widened. Finally. About time karma punched her in the face. And I quit, I added. She nearly spit out her drink. You what? I'm done, Tess. I can't go back to that life. I want to paint, really paint. I don't want to spend another minute pretending I'm someone else. Her expression softened into a proud smile. You're brave, Isla. Most people wait their whole lives to take that step. I don't feel brave, I admitted. Just ready. We clinked our coffee cups together, a silent toast to endings and beginnings. Later that night, as I sat by my window sketching absent-mindedly, my phone rang. It was Lucas. Big news, he said, his voice almost vibrating with excitement. A collector from New York saw your video and came to the gallery today. He wants to buy all 3 of your exhibited pieces. I blinked, stunned. All 3? Yes, he said. And he's not just any buyer. His name's Daniel Ashcroft. He owns a private collection that tours internationally. He thinks your work captures something raw and necessary. My breath caught in my throat. That's incredible. Lucas chuckled. Oh, and wait until you hear his offer. The price he offered made my knees buckle. He's offering $12,000 per piece, Lucas said over the phone. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words hung in the air like they didn't belong to me, like maybe I'd misheard him. $12,000 per painting. My brain tried to do the math, but all I could think about was how many months I'd scraped by on instant noodles, praying I wouldn't overdraft my bank account. And now someone wanted to pay nearly my entire year's salary for the work that once got laughed off as a cry for help. You're joking, I finally managed to whisper. Lucas laughed softly on the other end. I don't joke about good news, Isla. He said he's been following your story since the video went viral. He called your work rawly poetic. He wants to purchase all 3 pieces immediately. I sank onto my couch, my hands trembling. My living room still looked like a struggling artist's space canvases stacked in corners, brushes in mismatched jars, paint-splattered drop cloths on the floor. Nothing about it screamed success. Yet, in that moment, I realized I wasn't that invisible office girl anymore. Isla, Lucas continued. This is big. Daniel Ashcroft doesn't just buy art. He builds careers. Once he collects your work, other galleries will follow. I pressed a hand to my mouth, trying to hold back the flood of emotion. What do I even say to that? Say yes, Lucas replied simply. Say thank you, and then say yes. He chuckled again. I'll handle the sale details. You'll get the payment transfer within the week. And, Isla, congratulations. This is the start of something real. When we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, the reality slowly sinking in. The same hands that had been mocked for being covered in paint were now worth something. My pain, my story, my truth, they had value. I called Tessa next, because she was the only person who could possibly share this kind of disbelief with me. Tess, I blurted out, you're not going to believe this. All 3 paintings sold, 12,000 each. She gasped so loudly that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Oh my God, Isla, that's insane. I laughed, the sound breaking through tears. I don't even know what to feel. I thought I'd be happy, but I just feel stunned. Stunned? Girl, you should feel like you just won the emotional lottery. You worked for this. You earned this. Her joy poured through the phone, so contagious it finally made me smile. Later that evening, she came over, carrying a bottle of cheap champagne and a bag of confetti she must have dug out of a forgotten party drawer. We toasted in my cluttered little living room, surrounded by paint and chaos. To art, Tessa declared, raising her glass. To revenge that turned into rebirth. I clinked my glass against hers. And to the people who thought I'd never make it. We laughed until we cried. For the first time, my apartment didn't feel small, it felt alive. After she left, I sat in front of my easel again, my thoughts swirling. I picked up a blank canvas, dipped my brush into soft hues of gold and silver, and began painting without thinking. The strokes came naturally, flowing with quiet confidence. This one wasn't born out of pain, it was born out of peace. I called it becoming. The next morning, Lucas emailed me the official contract and transfer confirmation. It was real. My name, my art, my signature. I wasn't dreaming. Hours later, my inbox began to flood again, this time with inquiries from smaller galleries, art journalists, and local television producers. Everyone wanted to talk to the woman who turned mockery into mastery. The words made me smile, but they also made me think. For years, I'd let other people define me, coworkers, bosses, even my own doubts. Now, the world was finally listening, but I didn't want to be defined by pity or by one viral moment. I wanted to be known for my art. That afternoon, I met Lucas at the gallery to finalize paperwork. The space looked different now, busier somehow. New exhibits were being arranged, assistants moving pieces across the room. My section was already bare. The walls where my paintings once hung left faintly outlined with light dust marks. They're on their way to New York, Lucas said with a smile. Ashcroft sent a private courier. Hearing that made it real in a way that paperwork hadn't. My art was traveling farther than I ever had. As we sat down to review contracts, Lucas glanced up at me. You know, Isla, I've been in this business a long time, and artists like you don't come around often. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. You paint truth. Not pretty, not commercial truth. The world is starving for that right now. Don't lose it, even when success comes knocking. I nodded quietly. I won't. He smiled. Good. Because trust me, this is just the beginning. When I left the gallery, the sun was setting, streaks of orange and pink stretching across the Portland skyline. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing it in. A gentle breeze carried the faint scent of rain and lilacs. For the first time in years, I felt completely still inside. No noise, no shame, no fear, just stillness. I walked past the cafe where I'd once seen Megan sitting, the memory flashing briefly like a ghost. I wondered what she thought now if she'd seen the articles, the headlines, the viral video. Maybe she was angry. Maybe she felt regret. But for the first time, I realized I didn't care. I didn't need her validation. I didn't need her apology. When I got home, I opened my laptop and saw another email notification. My heart skipped. Subject: collaboration opportunity from the Harlow Gallery. Isla. We'd love to offer you a solo exhibition next season. Your story has captured more hearts than we could have imagined. Let's discuss the theme and next steps. I covered my mouth with both hands, overwhelmed. A solo exhibition. My name alone on that gallery wall. I wanted to call Tessa immediately, but before I could even type a message, a new notification appeared this time, from an unexpected sender. Megan Cooper. Her message was short. Isla, congratulations on your success. I'd like to speak privately, if possible. I believe we can help each other. Please consider it. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. After everything she'd done, after the humiliation, the sabotage, the cruelty now, she wanted to help. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. She wasn't reaching out to apologize. I could feel it. She wanted something. But the story wasn't over because Megan wasn't done with me yet. I thought Megan would fade away quietly, but I was wrong. When her name flashed across my inbox, I half expected it to be some kind of prank. After all the chaos she'd caused, the sabotage, the public humiliation, the months of cruelty, I couldn't imagine she'd ever reach out to me again. Yet there it was, a polite little message from Megan Cooper, sitting in my inbox like a ghost from the past. At first, I ignored it. I told myself I'd moved on, that responding would only drag me backward. But the curiosity itched at me. What could she possibly want? I finally opened the email that night, bracing myself. Isla, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I've had time to reflect on everything that happened, and I truly regret my behavior. I'd like to apologize in person if you'd be open to it. I think there's a way we can both benefit from moving forward together. Megan, benefit. The word made my skin crawl. I closed my laptop immediately. It wasn't an apology, it was a pitch. Megan didn't do anything unless there was something in it for her. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what moving forward together meant. I decided not to reply, choosing instead to focus on my next big step, planning the solo exhibition the Harlow Gallery had offered me. A few days later, I met with Lucas to discuss concepts for the show. He suggested a theme called The Art of Resilience, a reflection of my journey from ridicule to recognition. The title felt right. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about survival, strength, and rebirth. Everything was going smoothly until the day Megan showed up. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was at the gallery reviewing the lighting setup for my upcoming show. I heard the front door open and turned around, expecting Lucas. Instead, I froze. She was standing there, Megan. Dressed impeccably as always, her hair perfectly styled, her smile sharp as glass. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low but firm. She spread her hands innocently. "Relax, Isla, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to talk." "I think you've done enough talking," I said, turning away. "Please," she said quickly, taking a step forward. "Just hear me out. I know I was awful to you. I was jealous, insecure, and stupid, but now my career's, well, it's complicated. That video ruined me. I lost my job. No one wants to hire me. I can't even get a call back for consulting work. I'm blacklisted." I looked at her, expressionless. "And that's my problem because?" She flinched but kept her composure. "I know you have influence now. People listen to you. I was hoping maybe you could help me rebrand, maybe collaborate on something. An event, a joint workshop, something public that shows we've made peace. It would help both of us." I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. "Megan," I said slowly, "you publicly humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. You destroyed my paintings. You turned my passion into a punchline, And now you want to collaborate? Her smile faltered, desperation flickering across her eyes. Look, I know I messed up. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need a chance to rebuild. You, of all people, should understand what it's like to have people hate you. Her words hit like an echo of my own past, and for a brief second, I felt a pang of pity. But then I remembered the nights I'd cried over ruined canvases, the humiliation of seeing my art mocked across the office walls, the sickening laughter that haunted me for months. No, I said firmly. I don't owe you that. She stared at me for a long moment, her jaw tightening. Then she whispered, "You're really not going to help me?" No. Something dark flickered in her expression. "You'll regret this," she muttered, before turning on her heel and leaving the gallery. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was another one of her empty threats, the kind she used to throw around the office whenever someone stood up to her. But a few days later, I found out she wasn't bluffing. Late one night, as I was preparing promotional material for my exhibition, I got a notification from my art page. Someone had posted a long thread accusing me of stealing office property and passing it off as my own original work. The post included snippets of old group chat messages, taken completely out of context, along with a caption that read, "How authentic can an artist really be when her inspiration belongs to someone else?" The account posting it? A burner profile, but the writing style was unmistakably Megan's. I felt that old familiar sting of humiliation, but this time, I didn't panic. I'd learned too much to crumble again. I took screenshots, then called Tessa. "She's trying to smear you," Tessa said immediately. "What a pathetic move." "I know," I replied, rubbing my temples. "But it's not going to work. People know the truth now." And they did. Within hours, my supporters flooded the post with comments defending me, linking to articles, interviews, and statements from the Harlow Gallery. The truth spread faster than her lies. By morning, the post was gone deleted after being reported by hundreds of users. Megan had underestimated me again. A few days later, Lucas called. "We saw what happened online," he said. "Don't worry, it's handled. If anything, it's made people even more interested in your story. The gallery board has decided to make The Art of Resilience our headline exhibition this season." I blinked in surprise. "Seriously?" He chuckled. "Symbol, Isla. People don't just love your paintings, they admire your strength. That's what this show will celebrate." When I hung up, I stared at the empty canvases leaning against the wall. My story wasn't about Megan anymore, it never really had been. She was just a shadow in the background of something much bigger. I picked up my brush and began sketching my next piece, a woman standing in a storm, her face turned toward the light. I decided to title it, "Forged by Fire." The night of the new exhibition was approaching fast, and I could feel something powerful building inside me, not anger, not vengeance, but purpose. Still, part of me couldn't shake the feeling that Megan wasn't done yet. The day of that exhibition, someone unexpected showed up again. When I saw Megan standing at the back again, I felt pity. The opening night of my new exhibition, The Art of Resilience, had finally arrived. The gallery looked breathtaking, soft lighting, elegant banners, and walls adorned with pieces that told my entire story in color and emotion. The collection was my soul on display, moments of despair painted beside triumph, chaos beside calm. Guests began arriving early, their voices weaving a hum of excitement through the air. Reporters lingered near the entrance, photographers snapped shots of the crowd, and Lucas moved gracefully from one conversation to another, managing the event with quiet pride. I stood near my largest piece, Forged by Fire, as the first wave of visitors gathered. It was strange, watching strangers connect with fragments of my life. I overheard one woman whisper to her friend, "You can feel her pain and strength in every brushstroke." For a while, I forgot about everything else. Then, across the room, near the far corner of the gallery, I saw her. Megan. She was dressed differently this time, no power suit, no designer bag. Instead, she wore a simple gray coat and held a small clutch in her trembling hands. Her hair wasn't perfectly straightened, her makeup barely there. She looked smaller somehow. I froze. For a second, I thought about walking away, pretending I hadn't seen her. But something in her expression stopped me. It wasn't the cold confidence I remembered. It was regret. Genuine, quiet regret. Tessa noticed her before I could react. "You've got to be kidding me," she hissed under her breath. "What is she doing here again? Do you want me to have her escorted out?" I shook my head. "No. Let her stay." Tessa frowned. "You sure? After everything she's done?" "Yes," I said softly. "Maybe she needs to see this." As the evening continued, I focused on the event, greeting guests, answering questions, and posing for photos. But every now and then, I'd glance toward the back. And Megan was still there, silent, unmoving, watching. She didn't approach anyone. She didn't try to speak to me. She just stood, her gaze fixed on my art as if she were trying to understand something she'd never seen before. Toward the end of the night, when most of the crowd had thinned out, I finally walked toward her. My heels clicked softly on the polished floor, echoing through the gallery's fading chatter. She looked up when I stopped in front of her. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then, quietly, she spoke. "Your work is beautiful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you," I replied. She nodded slowly, eyes darting to one of the paintings beside us, a piece called Drowning Silence, the same one she'd once mocked at the office. Now, framed and spotlit, it looked ethereal. "I remember when you painted that," she said, a sad smile flickering across her face. "Back then, I didn't understand what you were trying to express. I just thought it was strange." I studied her carefully. "And now?" She exhaled shakily. "Now I see it for what it is. I see you for who you are. I've been angry for months, Isla. Angry, and at myself. Angry that I became the kind of person who tears others down just to feel taller." Her voice cracked slightly. "I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my friends. I thought I could rebuild by using you, and when that failed, I realized how pathetic it all was." I didn't interrupt, I just listened. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "But I needed to say I'm sorry. Not for my career. For what I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it." The air between us felt heavy but honest. For the first time, Megan didn't sound like she was performing. She sounded human. I took a deep breath. "You're right, you hurt me. More than you'll ever fully understand. But holding on to that pain doesn't serve me anymore." Her eyes widened slightly. "I forgive you," I said simply. "Not because you deserve it, but because I need to move forward without you in my story." For a moment, she looked stunned. Then she nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're a better person than I ever was." I gave a small smile. "No. I just finally learned that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom." She smiled faintly, eyes glistening, then turned to leave. "Good luck, Isla. You don't need it, but you deserve it." As she walked toward the exit, I felt something inside me settle. The anger I'd carried for so long dissolved quietly, like paint water swirling clear. Tessa appeared beside me, watching Megan disappear into the crowd outside. "You actually forgave her?" she asked, incredulous. "I did," I said softly, "because I don't want to spend my life painting from pain anymore. I want to paint from peace." Tessa smiled, her eyes softening. "You've really changed, Isla." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I finally became who I was supposed to be." Across the gallery, Lucas approached with a bright grin. "You did it," he said. "The turnout tonight was incredible. People are already talking about your next series." "Next series?" I repeated, surprised. He nodded enthusiastically. "The gallery board wants to offer you an exclusive artist contract. Studio space, a stipend, full creative control. You'll be part of the Harlow family permanently." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Lucas, are you serious?" he laughed. Dead serious. They love your work, Isla, they love you. I covered my mouth, overwhelmed with emotion. All the years of being underestimated, all the nights spent crying over ruined canvases and cruel laughter, it had all led to this moment. Lucas squeezed my shoulder. You earned this. Every brushstroke, every scar, every moment you refused to give up, it all brought you here. I smiled, tears slipping down my cheeks. Thank you. For believing in me when no one else did, he grinned. You did the hard part, Isla. I just gave you the wall to hang it on. As the last of the guests left and the gallery grew quiet, I stood in front of Forged by Fire one more time. The colors seemed to glow under the dim lights, ashes transformed into gold. That night, I realized my story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. About rising, not in spite of what broke me, but because of it. The Harlow Gallery wanted to offer me an exclusive artist contract. I had dreamed of this moment, but never dared believe it would come true. The morning after the Art of Resilience exhibition, I woke up to an inbox full of congratulations. My phone was flooded with messages from fellow artists, journalists, and strangers who'd been moved by my story. But the one message that stood out came from Lucas. Congratulations, Isla. The board loved your work. Let's finalize your artist contract today. For a while, I just sat there, staring at the words. I had replayed this kind of moment in my mind so many times, me finally being recognized for my art, but the reality was far more overwhelming. I wasn't just going to have another show. I was being offered a contract, stability, legitimacy, a future. At noon, I met Lucas at the Harlow Gallery. The familiar scent of varnish and paper hit me as soon as I stepped through the doors. He was waiting in the conference room with 2 members of the gallery board, both smiling warmly as I entered. Isla, Lucas said, rising to greet me. We're thrilled to make this official. I took a seat, my heart racing. On the table sat a neatly stacked folder, embossed with the gallery's logo. The cover read, Artist Representation Agreement, Harlow Gallery divided by Isla Hart. This is a multi-year contract, Lucas explained. It includes a monthly stipend, full access to our downtown studio space, and funding for new materials. We'll also manage sales, promotion, and exhibition logistics. All we want from you is to keep creating. I blinked, trying to absorb it all. You mean, I get to paint full-time? He smiled. Yes. No more balancing office work or side gigs, just your art. I felt the lump in my throat grow tighter. All those years of exhaustion painting after midnight, dragging myself to work on 3 hours of sleep, pretending I didn't care when people laughed, had led here. This wasn't luck. This was earned. As I signed my name at the bottom of the contract, the reality hit me with full force. I was finally free to live the life I'd always imagined. After the meeting, Lucas walked me through the gallery's private studio wing, a bright, airy space filled with natural light and the faint hum of inspiration. He showed me my designated studio, a room with wide windows and shelves already stocked with fresh canvases, paints, and brushes. This is yours now, he said. I turned in a slow circle, drinking it in. It's perfect, I whispered. Welcome home, Isla. The words almost undid me. Over the next few weeks, my life changed completely. Each morning, I'd walk to my new studio, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, the city waking up around me. I'd spend hours painting in peaceful silence, lost in color and texture. For the first time, I didn't paint out of pain, I painted out of purpose. Lucas checked in often, offering feedback and encouragement. He said the gallery wanted to center my next series on themes of rebirth, a fitting continuation of my journey. I decided to call the collection Echoes of Becoming. Meanwhile, Tessa became my biggest cheerleader. She helped me redecorate my apartment, turning my old cramped space into a cozy sanctuary filled with plants, warm lights, and prints of my favorite works. Your life finally looks like it belongs to you, she said one evening, curling up on my couch. I smiled, sipping tea. It feels like it too. Do you ever think about them? She asked gently. Your old coworkers, Megan? I thought about it for a moment. Sometimes. But not with anger anymore. Just gratitude. They pushed me to a breaking point, and that's where I rebuilt myself. Tessa nodded, smiling softly. You really did turn your pain into power. I spent the next month working non-stop, creating pieces that reflected my transformation. Each canvas told a story, one of rising, healing, and rediscovery. I painted a piece called Wings Made of Scars, another titled The Quiet Bloom, and one that became my favorite, Unshattered. When the gallery staff stopped by to preview the works, one of them said, "It's like watching someone come back to life." That comment stayed with me. Because in many ways, that's exactly what had happened. By the time Echoes of Becoming opened, I had grown into someone I barely recognized, a woman who didn't flinch under judgment, who spoke her truth without trembling, who painted not to escape but to celebrate. The night of the opening, the gallery was packed again. My paintings filled every wall, their colors alive under the day, soft glow of the lights. Guests drifted through with quiet awe, murmuring about the depth and emotion behind each piece. Lucas found me halfway through the evening, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it again," he said. I smiled. "We did it." He shook his head. "No, Isla. This was all you. You've become one of the gallery's defining artists. People see themselves in your work. That's rare." His words humbled me. The idea that my art could touch others, that it could reach beyond my pain and give someone else hope, was the greatest reward of all. After the crowd thinned out, I took a quiet walk through the gallery, letting my gaze linger on each painting. Every piece was a reflection of my journey, from the loneliness of drowning silence to the radiance of Unshattered. When I reached the final wall, I stopped in front of a framed plaque that read, "Echoes of Becoming, a solo exhibition by Isla Hart." Seeing my name there felt different this time. It wasn't just validation, it was identity. As I stood there, Lucas approached once more, handing me a letter. "This came in for you earlier," he said. I unfolded it. It was an invitation from an international art conference in Paris, asking me to speak about the relationship between pain and creativity. I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. "Paris," I whispered. "That doesn't even feel real," Lucas grinned. "Believe it, Isla. You're not just a local artist anymore. The world's watching." I looked back at my paintings, at the vibrant proof of everything I'd overcome, and smiled through tears. "I'm ready for it," I said quietly. "Whatever comes next." Lucas nodded. "Then you'd better get your passport." As the night ended and the lights dimmed, I lingered for a final moment beside Wings Made of Scars. Its colors glowed faintly in the quiet. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was chasing something. I had arrived. One final opportunity arrived that tested my humility and heart. Months later, the same office invited me back as a guest speaker. When I first got the email, I thought it was a mistake. The subject line read, "Corporate Wellness Week Inspirational Speaker Invitation." I almost deleted it without opening, assuming it was spam. But when I saw the company name in the signature, my heart stopped. It was them. My old workplace. I reread the message twice just to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting it. The HR director, a man named David Russo, explained that the company was hosting an internal event about creativity, resilience, and mental health in the workplace. He said they wanted to inspire employees through the stories of individuals who overcame adversity. And somehow, they had chosen me. For a full minute, I just stared at my laptop, half amused, half stunned. The same place that once mocked me for painting, the same people who taped my art to the walls to laugh at it, now wanted me to come back and teach them about resilience. I couldn't help but laugh. When I called Tessa to tell her, she burst out laughing too. "Oh, that's poetic justice. You have to do it." "I don't know," I said, biting my lip. "It feels strange. I've worked so hard to move forward. Going back there might reopen old wounds." She paused for a moment. "Or it could close them for good." That thought stuck with me. A few days later, I agreed to do it. The event was scheduled for a Friday afternoon in the company's main conference hall. I hadn't set foot in that building since the day I resigned. As I approached it again, a wave of memories hit me, the laughter, the whispers, the humiliation. But this time, I wasn't walking in with my head down. I walked in as Isla Hart, professional artist. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Her eyes widened. "Oh, Miss Hart, it's an honor. We've all seen your work online." "Thank you," I said, with a polite smile. "It's nice to be back." She handed me a visitor badge, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I clipped it on, amused by the irony of needing permission to enter a place that once made me feel like I didn't belong. The conference hall was filled with rows of chairs and a projector displaying my name and photo on the screen. Guest speaker: Isla Hart, The Art of Resilience. Seeing it there made my stomach flutter with a mix of pride and disbelief. David, the HR director, greeted me warmly. "We're so grateful you accepted, Isla. Your story really resonated with our team. It's an honor to have you." "Thank you for inviting me," I said, my tone calm but deliberate. It's full circle, in a way. As employees filed in, I spotted a few familiar faces. Some of them looked genuinely happy to see me. Others couldn't quite meet my eyes. Paige, my old coworker, was there too, sitting near the back. When she saw me, she smiled nervously and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I nodded slightly in return. Then the event began. David introduced me, speaking about how creativity can thrive even in the face of doubt and adversity. Then it was my turn. As I walked to the podium, the room fell silent. I took a deep breath and began. "I used to sit where you are," I said. "Right here in this office, behind a computer, trying to fit into a world that never quite fit me. I used to paint at night secretly because I was afraid of being laughed at." A murmur rippled through the room. I smiled faintly. And when I finally shared that part of myself, I was laughed at. I was mocked, ridiculed, and told that art wasn't a real career. But that humiliation, it became my turning point. As I spoke, I watched their expressions shift, some curious, some remorseful. "I learned that creativity isn't weakness," I continued. "It's courage. Every brushstroke I've made since that day has been a reminder that no one defines your worth but you. The same thing that made me an outsider here became the thing that gave me freedom." By the time I finished, the room was completely still. Then, slowly, applause began to build, gentle at first, then louder. Paige was the first to stand. Then others followed, until the entire room was on their feet. I felt tears sting my eyes. I hadn't come here for revenge or validation. I'd come to show that healing was possible, that art and pain could coexist and still produce beauty. After the applause faded, several employees came up to speak with me. One woman, a junior designer, said softly, "Your story made me want to start painting again. I used to, but I stopped because, well," people laughed. I smiled. "Then, paint again. Let them laugh, it won't stop you from growing." When the event ended, David thanked me again. "You've given us a lot to think about. I hope this helps us create a better culture here." "I hope so too," I said. And I meant it. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I didn't look back in anger. The air outside felt crisp, light, and new. The ghosts of that place no longer haunted me, they'd finally been laid to rest. That night, I went home and stood in front of my studio wall. On one side hung Drowning Silence, the painting that had started it all. Next to it, I hung a new piece I'd finished the week before, a bright, abstract work bursting with light and movement. I titled it Forgiven Canvas. When I stepped back and looked at the two side by side, I realized they told the entire story of my life. One was pain, the other was peace. Tessa came over later that evening, wine in hand. "So?" she asked. "How did it feel?" I smiled softly. "Peaceful. I think I finally let go of everything." She looked at the two paintings, her eyes glistening. "You did it, Isla. You turned every wound into something beautiful." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my chest. The next morning, I woke to the gentle Portland rain tapping against my window. I brewed coffee, sat by the easel, and picked up a new blank canvas. For the first time in my life, the emptiness didn't scare me, it invited me. Because I knew whatever I painted next, it would come from a place of freedom. They once mocked my paintings, but in the end, those very paintings set me free.